Welcome back to Dara Models. As you can probably tell, this video is going to be working on the interior of the Tamiya Castrol Celica that I'm working on. So I've started prepping all of the parts, and one thing that I've noticed is there's quite a lot of cleanup. If you look at the side of the seat there, you've got this mould line there, and it's the same on both seats, and I've also got the moulded in where the straps would be, which I need to open up. So I'm just going around cleaning all these parts up, getting them all ready, things like that. Where the injection moulding happens, that all needs to be cleaned up as well, and obviously the roll cage is getting worked on. So I've got all the bits prepped or off the sprue, ready for prep, and I'm just working through. So I'll see you shortly when I've done a bit more cleanup. Okay, as you can see, I've got the parts cleaned up now, and I've started filling in some of the sinkholes. So the next step that I'm going to do is start preparing the roll cage. So you've got these parts that fit on the sides here. There's a hole down there that goes in, and then that will sit like that. And then later on, you'll have the roof part will sit like that, and then it will attach on that point on that corner. But these attach to the dash, so I'm not going to glue that at the moment. But what I am going to do is prepare the other parts that do go together. So I'm going to make sure that the parts that I do will all fit properly. So that's going to sit in there, and that one will sit in there like that, and then that attaches to that point there. And it's not the easiest thing to do, they're quite fiddly, these. So what I'm going to do is just attach a bit of Tamiya extra thin on each piece as I've done it, but this is just to get the cage fitted as it should. So that's going to be in there like that, and then that second one will come in on this side. So what I'll do is one side at a time, just to get it tacked on there. And I'm going to assemble as much of the roll cage as I can like this. So I'm just going to get the Tamiya extra thin, just wrap it around that joint just to get it to hold. I'm not gluing the roll cage in, I'm just gluing it together. And then what it will mean is when it comes to painting it, it will be a bit neater. So that goes in there, that bottom one, and you can see this is really fiddly, so trying to do this when it's all painted up won't be easy at all. So I'm just making sure that that hole's where it's supposed to be in there, and then attach that one into there where it's supposed to be, like that. It really doesn't want to go on this one. Again, I'll put some glue on that joint there just to hold it. And that's how that part of the roll cage is going to sit. And then you've got that back piece there is a separate piece that attaches to the top of the rear suspension, so that will be kept separate. and then this piece here will sit like this, so I can glue that one on as well. So there's 2 points at the back, here and here, and then these 2 here where it will attach, so it's just going to sit like that. So I'll glue those 2 back ones to start with. They don't come off. Do the same with that. Put some glue in that joint there. And then I'm going to leave the roll cage in place where it needs to be for that glue to set. And then I'll paint that all up as it is. But there's a lot of prep work that I need to do now. This is the instructions for the hobby design set. And as you can see, a lot of it is for the interior, so they've got loads of work on the dash to do, and the gear selector and the interior tub itself. So I'm going to make a start on that and do some work on that, and then I'll show you my progress as I've got a bit to show you. As I'm going through all of these parts, checking everything, I came to the interior door panels, or lack of. There's hardly any detail in there at all. So what I've done is I've got some styrene sheet and I've just shaped it a little bit. So you've got the sort of upper part sort of panel there, I've made a sort of door handle there, and then a grab handle, and then I've made it to the right shape so that I can just glue those in there. So it just adds a little bit more detail to there, because as you can see there's not a lot at all, and it's almost like with that gap that they've left it like that deliberately to have an extra panel that you glue in, but there's nothing in the kit for it and there's nothing in the instructions. So I don't know whether that's part of the road going version that they've done that and it's not in this kit, but that's what I've observed in the photographs, that they still had the door panels. So I've decided to replicate them as best I can. So I'm just about to start painting everything up now, so I shall see you shortly in the spray booth. Okay, I'm ready to get some paint down now. So I've loaded the airbrush up with the Zero Paints Grey filler primer, and I'm ready to start spraying. So the first thing we're going to do is the interior tub, and show you how I go about that, because it's not straightforward on that. I'm just going to turn the extractor fan on. So because it's a complicated shape, what you need to do is try and work out a plan how you're going to attack it. So I'm just going to go into all the tight areas to start with. So I'm just going to go into there, same on that side. And then once that's done, then you can start moving onto the main part. So I'm not going to worry too much about where those door panels would be, because as I said previous, you're going to have those replaced. So I'm just giving it a light dusting for now. But you've got to take into account as well with this sort of shape as to where the fumes are going, because if I was to hold it like this and spray like that, all it's going to do is spray straight back in my face, which I don't want. So I'm just positioning it to make sure the fumes go out of the extractor where I want them. So there's going to be a bit of masking required on this to paint like the fire extinguishers and such in there, which I'll come to shortly. So that's that one done. I'm going to go off and I'm going to do the other parts, and then I'll come back to you in the next section. Right, so I've loaded the airbrush up with Zero Paint White primer now, and to start with I've just sprayed the inside of the tub ready for the gloss coat. So what I was going to show you now was painting the roll cage, because it's quite a complex shape. I thought I'd show you how I go about it. So just go around each section individually like this, because then I can make sure that I get all of it covered and don't miss any bits. Because the last thing you want to do is start painting it, get to the end, go to the next stage and then find that you've missed a bit. So in a methodical order, working front to back, just go around it all like this. And you can see I've got a lollipop stick that I'm using to hold the part, and what I've done is I've just got some double-sided sticky tape, drilled some holes in the stick, put the double-sided tape over it, and then using the mounting punch where it attaches to the main part to hold it onto the stick. So there's a badly moulded in fire extinguisher on the side there as well, which had a big hole in the back of it. So I filled it up with some sheet styrene and then tidied it up a bit, just so it looks a bit neater. So if you see it through the windows, it doesn't look too bad. So now that that front part's done, you can see it's just falling off the stick, but the front part's dry enough now that I can handle it. And then I can make sure I get all of that. And then just double check over it when you've done that to make sure there's no bits that you've missed. And then move on to the next bit. So I don't need to show you all of them. I'm just going to go through the same process with all the other bits roll cage, and I'm also going to paint the wheels while I'm here, ready to gloss coat them, because obviously there's a spare that goes in the boots, so I might as well do all of those at the same time. So I'll go off and do those, and then I'll come back at the next section. With the kit steering wheel, you can see there's a fair amount of detail that they've provided for you, with all of the sort of bolt heads around the actual steering boss, and then you've got the holes that have started which you could drill out, but the plastic's still quite thick on that. And in the hobby design set you have this piece here, which, as you can see, already has the holes in, and if you can see carefully in there, you've got the sort of dimples for the bolt heads, and then this piece here will go on the centre of it to have that raised bit. So I'm going to replace this, and what you actually do is I'll cut off the main part, and then that piece will glue onto the steering wheel, and then I cut off the centre part of that, so that you still got that sort of steering boss to hold it in place. So I'm going to go off and I'm going to do that, and then I'll show you where I'm at on the next step. Okay, I'm just going through making some progress on the photo parts, as I said. So one of the things that I've done is to make the fuel cell for the back. So I've bent it all up into shape and then soldered the corners and the edges, and then given it a bit of polish with some sanding sticks just to give it a bit of a reasonable look. And then I've bent the kick plate for the passenger side, cut the kit part out, and then replaced it with a bit of sheet styrene just so it's got a back to it, and then that's just going to sit there like that. And then the other thing that I'm working on is the console parts for the dash. So as you can see, I've got carbon fibre decals over them and then clear coated them, so you can see on that top one there how many holes there are for the rivets and things, and then these square bits have buttons to go over them, which are these bits here. So I'm just going through with each one. As you can see, here's one that I've got in progress, and you can see there I've just got to bend them up. So I've got these flat tweezers I like to use for this sort of thing. So very carefully I'm just getting the edge of it there, and then just bending it over like that, and then the same on the last side. So I've done two sides on this piece already, and then I'm just going to fold that last side over, and then what you get is this three-dimensional shape that will sit over that top section there. Focuses again, there you go, where those squares are on that top. So they're going to glue over that. So I've got a few more that I'm going to bend up into shape. The other thing that I've done is I started on the gear selector. So there's quite a lot of plastic around this that I've cut off, and then I've bent this to shape, which is where it will sit. Now it's going to sit on top of there like that, and then there's a couple of brackets that go over, and then a couple of rivets to hold them in place. So and lastly, I've bent the pedals to shape and then painted them with titanium gold. So that's where I'm currently at. So I'm going to go off and finish these little bits, and then hopefully I'll be in a position where in my next video, in the next section, I can show you the putting the dash together and doing some of the rivets. So I'll see you shortly. Alright, firstly I want to apologise to you all because I've skipped ahead a little bit more than I intended to on the video. So after painting the interior tub and the roll cage and everything, as you can see, I've picked out the fire extinguishers and started running some cables. I've also attached the mechanism, or the frame for the gear selector, which I don't know how well it picks up on this camera, but you've got a photo etched part that's sort of bent into shape, and then there's a couple of rivets that hold it in place, and then I've got the actual gear selector itself here, which is all painted up in a couple of different sort of metallics, and that's got a wire attached to it, and that will sit just on there like that. And then there's a couple more brackets that will sit over top of there, where you can see these holes that will have rivets through. I'll just carefully take that out and not lose that wire. I've also done some work on the roll cage, as you can see. So I've used some heat shrink around the actual bars to resemble some of the padding that you get, and ran a couple of wires up there, and you can possibly see there from heating up the thing, it's just sort of melted the plastic a bit, but that's, I think, going to be hidden inside the shelf, so I'm not too worried about that. But when that sits in there like that, then I'll sort of run these wires to the back into the fuel cell in a couple of places, and then I've got the seats that I've been working on, which I've used some micro balloons to resemble a sort of suede effect. And to do that, what I did, because I didn't film that, was I painted them with Zero Paints matte black, and then I used these micro balloons that I picked up off eBay, and while the paint was still wet, I sprinkled them over it, and then sort of applied another coat of matte black over it to give that effect. But before I did that, I've used the carbon Kevlar decal, as I did on the underside on the back of the seats as well, and I've got some photo etch buckles to do for that. As I mentioned before about the door panels, I've painted those up, made those up and painted those as well now, so they're going to sit in there and use the same effect on the trim there for them, just to make it look a little bit less bland than that is. Every photo I looked at of an interior of this car showed me a different door panel, so I'm not quite sure which was authentic, so I went with a sort of middle of the range one that I found. I've also done all of the wheels, which I showed you doing these decals in another video, so these are all done. The Oz logos on them, the kit decals, and as you can see in that one, it didn't quite go to plan. They're so brittle, as soon as I tried to apply them they started breaking up on me, so there's a couple that turned out okay, but for the most part I think they got damaged. So this is the interior one that's going to sit inside the roll cage, and so I've done all 5 of the wheels for that, and then I've finished off the dash. And I know I said initially I was going to go through and show you some of this work, but I think I've done a quick calculation and I've probably got about 40 or 50 hours in just on this interior, so I'm sure you won't want to sit watching a video of all of that, so I've just been cracking on trying to get all the sort of detail work done, ready for assembly, and not make this a ridiculously long video. So there's the steering wheel all assembled, as I was talking about. So that's the photo etch piece in the centre of it, and then the kit wheel itself that was cut off, and then the boss on the back of it, which is still glued on. And I used the same effect with the micro balloons on the steering wheel, painted the yellow strip, masked that off, and then did the rest of it. And then I've got a few photo etch parts. If I just move my light over a bit to try and give you a better look in there, you can see the photo etch gauges that I've done, which I painted those black, and then sort of lightly sanded over them just to basically rub the paint off the raised edges so you can see the dials there. And then you've got loads of buttons and switches and things, and it's difficult to focus on here and actually get you to see, but if I hold it like that, I think you start to see some of the buttons that are on there. Each of those had to be the hole drilled out, and then the sort of metal rivets applied, which are, that's a sample of some of them, you can see there. So it's quite time consuming going through all of that. And then these here are fuses, which again photo etch, and they had to be bent over into shape. I've already shown you these buttons, which I've now glued on, and then you've got all the switches along the top, and then obviously the photo etch pedals. So a lot of work has gone into that dash, and like I said, apologies for not showing any of it, but it was so time consuming doing all of that. that I didn't feel justified in putting it all into a video. And the last thing I'm going to show you quickly now is the rest of the roll cage, and these are the side parts which I've painted up, and that's all that is the matte black and some matte clear coat over the top just to flatten off that little bit more, and then just got some wire that I've just wrapped around it to resemble the cable ties or whatever it would be that sort of tie them up. And then I've made a start on doing the buckles for the rear wheel, the spare wheel that will sit at the back, and that's the other part of it. And these initially were all photo etch that require you to paint the strap, and when I was looking at it, it didn't seem to fit that well, so I cut most of the strap off, just left, as you can see, a little bit on the back of there, just to have enough to hold it to that strap, just so that I can make it a bit longer and wrap around a bit nicer, and it also matches the material for the rest of the seat belts that I'm going to do, which was in the hobby design set, which is this. Again, it's difficult to pick it up and get it to focus, but you can see it's got a bit of a pattern there, so it's quite nice material. It's sticky back as well, so it's easy to work with, and then you can sort of stick it down into place. So I'll try and do a video, if it turns out okay, on actually assembling one of those seat belts, just so you get an idea of what that's like. I'll do that in a separate video, but as you can see, I've just been going through doing a lot of sort of wiring and detailing work, which I didn't feel would be justified in putting in the video, because it's just a lot of drilling holes, running wire, seeing how it fits, holding it in place while the glue sets and stuff like that. So you can see where we're getting with it, and there's a few reference photos that I've got that show some of the wires running, and then a bit of it is artistic license, let's say, on where they're actually running to and how they're going. And as you can see at the front, I've just sort of cut them off, they don't actually go anywhere. So that's where I'm at. So as I said, I'm going to go off, do a little bit more of this sort of detail work and finishing off, and then I'll show you when I've got some assembly that I feel is worth actually showing you on camera. But again, last thing I'm going to say is the fire extinguisher on the actual roll cage. That was a moulded in piece, so I masked off the roll cage and then sprayed the red. I've painted silver and then given it an oil wash, and on the back of it, albeit it's not a massively neat job, there was basically a big hole in the back of this, so I've used some sheet styrene to fill it, and then sort of trimmed it off, tried to get it, you can see there, so that it's got the shape of the buckles or the straps going with the rest of it, and I just shaped that with a knife a little bit, but you can see it's not perfect. But once it's inside the car and the frames on it, the shells on it, the glasses in and everything, I don't think that's going to be that visible. So that's where I'm currently at, and I will show you when, as I said, when I've got some assembly to do. So I'll see you shortly. Okay, I'm finally at a point now of putting everything together with the interior. So I've glued the door panels in already, as you can see there. So the next thing I need to do is glue in the bottom parts of the roll cage. So using some Tamiya cement, just going to put a bit on this bottom piece there, which is going to sit in that hole there. And then that back piece just rests in here. So I'm not going to put any glue on that part of it. And then I'm going to do the same with the other side of the roll cage. So again, just a bit of glue on there, and then I'll place that in that hole down there, and that will just rest on the side. Then once the top part of the roll cage is in, these parts will sit against that. which will be after I've put the dash and everything in. So the next piece I'm going to do is this back part that sits over here. So again, I'll put a bit of glue on there, a bit of glue on there, just on that back edge, and then I'll fit this piece in, which is a fairly snug fit anyway. And then I'm going to, let's have a look, what's next? I'm going to fit the kick plates. So I've already got some super glue ready. So I'm just going to put a thin strip of super glue along both edges of this. This is on the driver's side. So that will sit under there, like that. And I'm going to do the same on this one. Which is on the Copa driver's side. Which goes down there like that. In fact, I'll put some glue on the back of that as well. Spread it out a bit so it's got plenty of area to glue. Make sure I don't catch that wire that's there. So that's going to sit like that, and then I'm going to glue the fuel tank in, and this is the photo etch piece in the Hobby Design set, and I've taken a resin connector which I've glued a photo etch washer onto, and then glued that onto there. So that's going to sit at the back. So again, I'll put some super glue on the bottom of this, and then carefully position that where I want it, so I can sit there like that. So I've got that connector ready for the wire that I've got on the attached to the roll cage at the moment. So I've got another one painted up that's going to fit in that hole there, which I will fit when I'm ready for the to do the wire. So the next part will be to install the seats. So as I showed you before in the previous video, I've already done the buckles, and these are just loose in the back until I know exactly where I want them to go. So I've got some glue on that base. It's pretty much on the brush, but fortunately it's going to be underneath the seat, so I'll get away with that. So I was going to sit there like that. I'm going to have to work out a way of working with the seatbelt straps inside the roll cage, which will be a little bit interesting, but we like a challenge, so. That seat sits there like that. It's slightly forward to the other one, looking at that. So then I'm going to put the dash on, which I've really been looking forward to. And again, there's just so much detail in that, with all of the switches and knobs and all the rest of it. It's like a work of art in itself, that. So put some glue in that section, and some glue in that section. And very carefully, because it's quite delicate piece with all the photo etch and everything on. That will slide down into there and sit nicely. And then I've got a couple of knobs and switches. So I've got this lever here, which if you use my tweezers to hold onto that. I'm not sure if this is a handbrake or something. So I'm using the plastic cement as I've removed any paint from these parts, so it will stick. If I was to try to glue it directly over the paint, it's not going to hold. So then I've got this other lever there, which sits down there, in that gap there. I'll just make sure it's in place properly with the tweezers again. And then the last bit for this is the gear selector, which you're going to need some super glue. And that will sit on top of this piece here. So, got to be a bit careful with this one because it's got the wire. So I want the wire to go up in the dash underneath there, and that goes through that hole in the dash, if you can see there, and then sits on top of that section there. And I have just knocked that wire out, so I'm going to remove that and put the wire in. That's what I was saying about having to be very careful with that, because it's when it gets delicate like this that you start having problems. So, doesn't want to go in now. There you go. So again, under the dash, and then that goes through that hole there, and it will sit just on top of that bit there. And then what's going to be even more fun is I've got some brackets that will sit over these pieces here with a couple of rivets that go in. So just move that wire along so it's not under the pedals, so it's a bit more in line with where it wants to be. So it's all fun, this. Lots of fiddly little work. So I'm just checking the instructions to make sure I'm not missing any key parts. So I think I can move on to doing this part of the roll cage now. So what I will do is I'll move the straps for these seat belts forward a bit, so I've got some space to work. I want that to go in there like that. So that will sit up there, and then we'll sit down there. That's going to go down there. So if I remove it a bit while I put the glue where I want it in those pieces, I'm going to pull that bit of the seat belt through there where I want it. And that one. There we go. Make life easier if I get those positioned where properly to start with. get that one down there, and these can go in place down here, like that, and then I'll put a little bit on the front pins where it attaches to the dashboard. So sit like that. So I'm going to let all that glue set, and then I'm going to move on to the next little bit. So that's the bulk of the interior done. What I need to do after this is attach that to the main base, put these where they need to be, and then do the back part with the wheel and everything. So let me get this glue to set, and then I'll move on to that bit. Right, as you can see, I've got the roll cage attached and the interior attached to the chassis now, and I've fitted, if I get a cocktail stick to show you, so I can actually point to it, I've fitted these brackets now with these rivets over them, over that gear selector as well. If you can see, if it focuses, and obviously you've still got all that dash. I just can't get over how much detail they've put in that dash and on the interior in this hobby design set, and then the pedals and everything. So that's all glued in, and then what I've done is I've attached the spare wheel in here with a buckle over there, so that's ready to drop in situ over here. So if I pull these seat belts forward to give myself some space to work, what I need to do, these wires need to be moved out of the way a bit. So that's going to sit underneath there. And it's going to be a little bit of a snug fit to get it down there. Work out where I want these wires to run. This is the problem with putting aftermarket wires and things in, is working out where you actually want them to go. That one's okay. That one's a little tight under there. So I'll just take that off. In fact, I'll take both of those out. If it comes out, there we go. I'm going to feed those over the top as well, and then that will sit nicely like that. And then I can obviously do the seat belts into here, as I said. So that's going to sit nicely there now that I've checked that. So I've lifted it up a bit, and then I can put some glue under there. Glue on that one, and some glue on that one. Push those into place where they want to sit. And that's actually stuck onto the top of the suspension uprights from underneath. And then obviously I can reattach these now. that one's okay there. I'll leave that going under. Just adds a little bit more detail and character to it. So I'll reconnect these cables and I'll connect the other ones up that I've done, and I'll do the seat belts, and then I'll just show you when I've finished those off. Okay, so that's the interior all finished up now, with all the seat belt detail done and all the buckles and everything. And then the rear wheel, spare wheel in the back there, going with the ratchet strap over there, and then you can see there how I've attached the seat belts to the rear part of the roll cage, and then just a couple of sort of extra wires and detail in there. So I'll bring the light over a bit to try and hopefully get it in focus a bit better. So you can see all the detail that's in there, and there's a lot of work gone into this, countless hours now, but as you can see, I'm sure you agree that it'll sort of pay off in the overall look of it. These wires here I'm just going to sort of tuck behind the dash so they won't be visible once the body shell's on. So that's it for this video. I think it's going to be quite long from the segments that I've recorded, but I hope you've sort of seen it through and enjoyed watching it, and I'll hope to see you next time, and thank you for watching.